Brock Holton. Brock Holton comes from my previous school. He's a graduate, so we'll say the school. It's Coram Deo Academy. If you haven't heard of Coram Deo, it's a very prestigious private school in Flower Mound. There's a Flower Mound campus, there's a Plano campus, and there's a Dallas campus. That was my first head coaching athletic director job. And as I've referenced in the book, I got it in 2020, and it was COVID. So why did I call Brock Holton in here? Brock Holton's one of the first people I met. Also, as meeting him, I noticed when I first met him, I was like, he was in 10th grade, probably 15, and didn't look very impressive to me. So I'm like, okay. But the first thing that I remember him is asking, how can I get better? Always asking, how can I get better? So that's what I remember about you. So Brock Holton is here. Brock Holton graduated from Coram Deo. He's at Ouachita Baptist. That's a Division II school. He's there playing football. He happens to be in town because he's trying to get into Texas A&M School of Law. And he is by far one of the prime examples of what this culture is. And he was in it when we weren't even doing it the right way, essentially. So welcome, Brock. I'm glad you're here. Take me back to you seeing Coach Riley and the whole hoopla come in the door. What was that like?
So I remember freshman year of high school, you come in, and it's a small school, so there wasn't just an ample amount of opportunity if you weren't just this super developed phenom as a freshman in high school, being 14 years old. And so historically, Coram Deo had competed well at the division we were in TAPS 4A. And when Coach Riley came, we had been bumped into TAPS 5A. And so there had been a lot of discourse surrounding that season where it's like, oh, we have to go play these big schools. Last time we had to play these big schools, it was just bad. We have 30 people on the team or whatever, just a lot of like kind of a negative attitude. And I've always thought like going into a situation and expecting to lose is one of the worst things that you can do just as an individual, is because you never, one, give yourself that chance to win, but then two, I mean, you just carry that mindset of losing with you regardless of the circumstances. And I mean, you see all the time teams who shouldn't win, individuals who shouldn't win that win. And I, personally ascribe it to God and the supernatural that goes far beyond what we can understand in this material world. But, in the context of athletics, just there's a way to make it happen. And I think that was kind of the first thing that I remember was seeing like a coaching staff that came in, which was a lot bigger than the previous one. They just had like belief, right? And so I remember being in the gym and everyone gets sorted out, and I'm a little nervous. I'm like, whatever, 15, my brain's not developed, but he said, okay, seniors sit over there, juniors sit over there, sophomores sit over there, freshmen sit over there. And my sophomore class was pretty big. It was a pretty sizable group, a lot of great athletes. I want to say 4 or 5 of us played college sports. One guy's in the MLB right now. I'm still playing football. Yeah, some good athletes in there for sure. And I don't know if it was the first day, but early on, you were like, this class is going to be like the class. And then we went out, we did the whole summer training, which was incredibly difficult, especially at the time. It was so hot. We're in like this issued gear that we had never had before, these white compression shirts, doing the whole rounds. And I remember we'd go around to these circuits, and every single time that I'd get to where Coach Riley was, like it was my mindset, like I'm gonna do like the best that I possibly can. Like I was already, trying my best, but I'm gonna go the extra right here. And just trying to be my absolute best was what I first remember. But I think the energy that I felt from the coaching staff was one that not only believed in the ability of the program to do well despite the circumstances, but belief in me as an individual. And like Coach Riley just said, I wouldn't have known any different at the time, but I wasn't like an impressive looking, developed 15-year-old, but I still felt this like feeling of belief, where I think an athlete who doesn't feel like his coaches or his peers believe in him is not going to perform well regardless of the circumstances. You can have as much intrinsic belief as you want, but if your coaches don't believe in you and aren't putting you in a position to succeed, it's going to be very difficult. And it happens sometimes. You have guys like Brady who make it happen, but the vast majority of people, belief from the coaching staff and a belief from your leaders and your peers is going to correlate to success at a high rate. And so I think that's what I remember early, was feeling a sense of belief from the coaching staff, both in the program and as me as a player. But yeah.
So when you talk about, you see this fanfare come in, so to speak, you see this a bigger coaching staff. You're just seeing these differences. But what I caught that you said that made the biggest impact on me was you felt our belief. And I just caught you saying that. And I don't know that I've ever realized that. You caught our belief. So keep in mind, we never built a program before. Could you tell we never built a program before?
I don't think so. I mean, there was the stuff that we knew about you. And I mean, when you're 15, it's all, I don't want to say arbitrary, but cool stuff sounds cool.
You were in something bigger than you thought with with the culture, not necessarily the staff, but when did you go all in, I guess is the best way to word it.
It's an interesting question. And a lot of it blurs together that summer into that early fall. Uh, I think, like I said before, just the belief that you had in me, and then Coach G and Max specifically, you could feel from them. And we had a great staff. I mean, Kowalski was on that staff. There was some great stuff going on. Uh, I don't I don't know. I can't remember a definitive date. I do remember we played Grace Prep week 1, and we beat them pretty bad. And in the second quarter, maybe the third quarter of that game, Jackson Corley, who was our starting middle linebacker, he tore his ACL, and I was the two. And so Max threw me in the game. I didn't really know what I was doing. It was fine. We still won like 36-0, I think. Then that next week, Max had told me beforehand, like, you're starting middle linebacker, and I probably didn't do what I should have done in practice. I probably wasn't mentally locked in. I don't remember. But as a series of events led to, we play the next game. We play Brook Hill at their place in Bullard. And I think it was a close game. We ended up losing. But I didn't play a snap on defense. Maybe I played some special teams, but I didn't play at all. And after that game, I remember being on the bus and saying, like, I'm not going to just, like, let that happen, right? Like, I feel like you talked about it a second ago where, like, you didn't know what was going to happen. You came in guns a-blazing, but you didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that's something that's been spoken to me a lot recently, is this element of faith. Because, for the majority of human history, humans were entirely dependent on God for everything, right? Obviously, we still are today, to wake up and to have our heartbeat, and that everything, all of our functions work as intended. But for a lot of history, you would plant your crops and you would pray to God that the rain would come. Because if the rain didn't come and the crops didn't grow, man, like, you might just be cooked, like, it might just be over for you and your family, because you're living in a society where you're entirely dependent on just the natural processes of nature. And we live today in a technologically advanced era where we don't really have to worry where our next meal is going to come from, or we don't have to worry about that stuff. And so the element of faith in our day-to-day kind of gets eliminated, because we feel as a society like we can do things on our own. And so for me, I think at that time was where I kind of made that decision that, hey, I'm going to work hard at this. And even if I don't play again next week or whatever, like, I'm going to have tried my best and I'm going to put my best foot forward. And I'm not going to let another week, another game go by where I probably didn't do the best that I could have leading up to it. And then I'm going to be upset about a result where I didn't, like, go all in on it. You have to plant the seed in order to expect a harvest, right? And that's all throughout his scripture as well.
It's interesting you say that, because I talk about the parable of the sower and how you have to throw your seeds on fertile soil. So speaking of that, we go through, it's a abbreviated year because of COVID, but you got through your first summer, which what I called it back then was acclimation. And that was basically just, y'all had to acclimate to me and my coaching staff. That acclimation process was different. Now let's fast forward. We start morning weights after the season's over, and I go to you, or you came to me. Something happened to where, because you came to me a lot, and that goes along with what I talk about in the book about having an open door policy. So that open door policy I still have here. If my door is closed, people do respect it, but I usually keep it open. But I remember telling you, hey, you can come talk to me anytime you want, as long as you're not, supposed to be in class. or tutoring. So when you came to me, some point in there, we talked about, dude, I keep seeing all these athletes walking around school. Why aren't they playing football? And so I took you through a process. Now, in that process, you convinced, like you and a couple other guys, convinced about 20 something guys to join the varsity football program that were in the school already. You didn't have to go out and recruit. You went and recruited. Now, I call it recruiting the halls. Obviously, at Coram Deo, there weren't halls, but you were recruiting. You were recruiting the classes. And it's even more difficult for people who don't know because you got Monday, Wednesday kids and you got Tuesday, Thursday kids. And if you didn't play sports with them, you may not actually see them often in the same school. So somewhere in there, I took you through, I call it sales training. You may have looked at it a different way. But anyway, you start convincing all these people to come out. And now you're trying to prepare them for their first summer, but it's your second summer. What did you think going into your second summer? Did you think it was going to be easier, the same, or worse? Or do you even remember?
I would say you mentioned morning weights. I remember Max telling me that we were going to do those. And to me, that was completely foreign. I was like, what do you mean we're waking up early and lifting? Like, what the heck? But that was like super fun. Just being up there early with the guys and getting it done. I got a lot stronger for sure. Uh, as far as recruiting the halls go, I think a lot of it started with the energy and the culture and the belief that came from the first season. And that first season, we went like 1-7, is that right? And which was unfortunate because we had like like a super talented team. Like that might have been the most talented team that I played on in high school. Yeah, we had some really talented players. But I think, like I said before, when you have like a group of guys who have gone throughout their whole high school career expecting to lose, it's difficult to change that in a few months, especially when the conversation and the dialogue beforehand was, oh, we're playing, you know, 5A schools, we're not going to be able to win. And then, I mean, uh, first 5A school we played was Faith, right? And I think we lost that game by like maybe one touchdown. And I think they went to the quarterfinals that year. So, I mean, stuff like that, I think changes the perception. But I think just in general, the culture of belief in the school uh, does a lot. So I remember me, Carson, and John were at school 5 days a week. And I remember us being in your office. And I remember us specifically like having a shared note document on our phone. And it's like we all like were chiming in like, oh, this guy, like, what do we say here? And we had written down like, what do you say? Because, you know, there's a lot of questions. Some of them are very specific to Coram Deo about like, oh, how does this work? How does the cost work? How does ABC work? And we were able to answer those questions to an appropriate enough level to get people in the door, right? And I remember Matthew Klein specifically, and I was like, I'd been on him for weeks, and I was like, dude, just come talk to Coach Riley. Just like, come talk to Coach Riley. And finally, I got him to walk up those stairs, the corner of the gym, and talk to you in the office. And then I think y'all talked, like I left, and I had gone out to like track practice or something. And then like 30 minutes later, he comes out and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna join the football team. I'm like, okay, like, that's all it took, just getting people in the door. But yeah, I think it's that culture and that belief that you feel in a program and then also in players. And I think another big thing was that we weren't telling these guys like, hey, just come join so you can play scout team. It was like, hey, like, come join. Like, you know, you saw me a year ago, I wasn't really impressive. And now look, like I like play football, I love football type stuff. And so you had guys that joined that I don't think would have joined in the absence of that. Guys like Ben Sheegan. I've been close with Joel Mayer for a while. He joined. Some of my best friend now, Marshall Potter, one of them, he just invited me to be in groomsman in his wedding. He's getting married this December. He joined that summer. And it's kind of the same story with those guys like Brooks Ward, that they join and they're really undersized. They haven't played a contact sport before. They might play one sport, whatever. And you don't think much of them. But I think back now, and it's like, I think Marshall and Brooks senior year both were starters, were all district guys. And like, it's really impressive, like the amount of development that can come when you're in a program that believes in you. So yeah, but sorry, that's a tangent. Going into your actual question of that second summer, I remember just being super excited. And I had these like goals for myself. And I remember I wanted to be 185 pounds by the start of the second summer because that was like the weight that I was told would be good. And I remember I had like gone to pick up, I think it was Marshall Humphrey or something. Like I'd gone to pick him up to bring him to summer workouts. And I had been like chugging water that morning. I had drank like a gallon of water just to like make weight or whatever. I go and weigh in, I hit the weight, and then I had to like go like pee it all out. But I remember just being super excited, having a lot of belief in like I think everyone on the team like was super optimistic about like what we could do. And I think that that like directly translated to the success of the program is you had guys that felt the belief on day one, specifically that sophomore class that was then going to be juniors because we didn't have a big senior class that year. And then you had new guys who joined because of that belief that they felt. And I think that really translated to, hey, like, I don't care who's on our schedule, let's go run it, right? Um, yeah, so that was the summer leading into that. And I remember like I was thinking about I was reading your book, and you were talking about the summer, and like some of it just didn't even make sense. Like you had guys I remember like not going on vacation to like go to practice, and like to us it felt normal. It was like, oh yeah, you come to a summer workout, and now I'm like in college, and I'm like, what? Like that, there was like so much of like an understanding like this is what you do, that it really like kind of transcended what most people would consider normal at the time, which I guess is where built different comes from. But
So let's move on. So, one of my proudest moments about you specifically, which really goes into what this book is all about, is we talked about it before, but you're a really hard worker, and you're a preacher's kid. Your dad's a pastor. He's a big church. It's all over Flower Mound. Um, I mean, your dad was one of the very few don't have to schedule a meeting dads. There's only a handful of them here. He could just come up and talk, about anything. But one thing I want people to know that watch this, and I'm thinking more coaches than players, because this is really designed for coaches to watch. Because I want coaches to duplicate what we do, not because we're great, but because of how we develop people like you. I mean, your hard work paid off. At some point, I told you you would go to college to play football, and at some point, you believed it. But what I want you to tell coaches is, what is it like whenever you aesthetically don't fit the part, but your coaches know you fit the part? What did that feel like? Because you talked about Max McCauley believing in you and us, but what did that feel like to know you actually don't fit the part right now, but you fit the part?
for sure, I remember. So you got hired during COVID, and so some of the first things that we did were you had Zoom meetings with us like as a team. And I remember like hearing some like offensive install from Coach G, and Luke Newton and I would go out and try to like do the plays and stuff. And we were both backups at the time. And but it was still, just believing in the process. And in one of those Zoom interviews, I remember I was there with my dad. My dad, like when I got home from spring break last Friday night, and we talked about you having reached out to us, and he said this exactly. I'll quote what he said. He's pointing at the kitchen table. He's like, we had the laptop right there. And Coach Riley said, if your son is a decent to good athlete and works hard and does right in the classroom, like they'll have an opportunity to play in college. And my dad and I both were like, yeah, all right, whatever. Like we just didn't understand it because in the past, and this is how most high schools function in America, is your best players might get a D3 offer from the local school, but unless you just check every measurable Power 4 box, like you're just not going to get those opportunities without marketing yourself. And I don't think that's something that we understood because historically at our school, like I said, we had a pretty good program throughout the years, but even our best players would go to a D3 in like Minnesota, right? And if you know what I'm talking about, that guy did really, really well. But that's just kind of the expectation. And so I remember one of the first practices even, you had us like all around in the circle and you were like, okay, who here wants to go play college? And Carson Schmitz raises his hand. I'm sitting by. I'm like, what the heck, dude? Like, you're not going to go play in college. Like, no one's going to play in college. Jaden's going to go play in college, and that's it. And I think it shifted really at first when Jaden got those big school offers, but we all like knew that Jaden was a Power 4 type of player anyway. But then that first recruiting class of the team that went 1-7, you have guys like Jack and Aiden, Ledbetters, those guys getting offers. And I think like that instilled belief because, I had a lot of respect for those guys, but they didn't seem like as far off as a guy like Jaden. And I remember going into that next offseason, I took my ACT. I did well on the ACT, and I told you what I got, and you were like, yeah, you're gonna go play college football. And I'm like, you're starting to believe it. And then I think what was big for me was being in close quarters with Carson, who really did believe it, and really was doing stuff, filling out questionnaires and doing stuff every day. And I mean, again, it all really goes back to belief, because you felt the belief in me and you were telling me, hey, if you want to do it, go to this camp, fill out this questionnaire, do X, Y, and Z, make a Twitter. You said that on your first Zoom call with us, and I made a Twitter, which I didn't have before. And my parents normally wouldn't have let me have that, but they, listened to you, fortunately. And I think that's when it started to really shift into something that I wanted to do. And the opportunities became like obvious that they would be there and be apparent. And I mean, I think it was within that first year, calendar year, that you started, like you went from, hey, like this isn't realistic, like only the best of the best go to play college, to like, this is something that really happens. And our coach is someone who gives us the connections to do it. And that was something we were telling transfers from other schools. That was something we were telling players in our hallways. That was stuff that we were just telling like our friends and family. And so I think that's where it really started to shift. And you're talking about like when you don't fit the build. I don't know. You're very aware when you go to a school in DFW, when you're surrounded by Geyer and Marcus and stuff like Carroll, that like there's a higher level of program that exists with people you go to church with and people you grew up with. But I think like I still had a belief in myself pretty early on. And I think even that winter, I started to get those like prospect letters or stuff that they just send out to everyone in mass because they want people to register for their camps. And I had like friends who I was like, oh yeah, I got this thing. And I think I like told like this girl that, and then my other friend like likes the same girl. And so he was like, she told me, he told me her later, it was like, well, they send that to everyone. Like, he's not really going to go play in college. But I think at that moment, even, which was in like February or March, I like was like, no, I'm going to, like, I can do this. Like, I believe in myself. Is that kind of what you were asking? I feel like I've yapped a little
Yeah,
bit.
the biggest thing is what coaches have to understand is when a culture is built, first it has to be built on Christ. Second, it has to be built on belief of the coach about the player. That a coach, a really good coaching staff, can take an average player or a below average player and make them above average. They can take an above average player and make them excellent. And in that process, you're going through all those processes, and what you're seeing happen is everything we're telling you to do is working. We talked about summer weights, not summer weights, morning weights. Morning weights was huge. You started getting gains. Everyone started getting gains. Reed Chandler's getting gains. Everyone's getting gains and now word's getting out. Hey, something's going on in morning weights. And so your body started to change. And in the process of your body starting to change, your mind was already there. So that's the thing that people aren't getting when they go to schools and they coach where they're academically superior kids, is their mind's already there. You just got to get their body to catch up. So once your body caught up and you started playing, I know that second year with us, it was completely different for you. What I really want, what I want coaches to know as we kind of wrap this up is I want them to know what type of impact, and this isn't about me, just so you know, what type of impact do coaches have on people like you who are hardworking, way above average in intelligence, but like we have to tell you not to work. What could you tell a coach who looks at the bottom of his roster and's like, I don't have time for that, and all they do is pour into the top of the roster? What could you tell them to do different?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back to one thing on the previous question. You mentioned grades a lot. And if this is going to give you by one kid, I feel like I tell every kid that I talk to about college this. I'm going to look at the camera now. If you are a high school student and you want to play college football, make sure your grades are the best they possibly can be, because your GPA will open doors for you that your athletic ability cannot. And that doesn't make sense to you at the time, I understand. But if you are a good athlete, if you are a D3 caliber athlete and you have exceptional test scores, exceptional GPA, you can get into schools like Ivy schools, MIT, what are some other schools in that realm? The Patriot League. these sub Power Four conferences that have incredible academic potential that you can get to by merit more so of you playing football and being an asset to that football program than because you have a 36 ACT. So, and that applies at the top to an Ivy school, but it can apply at all levels to you getting opportunities by merit of football, but because of your academics. So I used this illustration before. If you're a freshman or a sophomore in high school and you go out and play a JV game and you just have the worst game of your life, right? And you do absolutely terrible and you fumble 6 times and you throw 3 interceptions, whatever. Like long term, college is not going to not recruit you because of a terrible game you had when you were a freshman or a sophomore. But if you slack off for a semester as a freshman or sophomore in high school and you get a 2.1 GPA and after that you lock in and you have 4 points the rest of your time, you can legitimately lose opportunities because of that 2.1 from your freshman or sophomore year in high school when you were 14 or 15 years old in a manner that you can't lose opportunities from anything else that you did. Aside from like getting arrested, something that's gonna like stay on your record, nothing else that you do has as long-term of an impact on where you go and what you can do as like your grades. And so that's just something that y'all say it all the time, but maybe hearing it from a new face will convince someone to study harder for their next test because it really does make a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. Even here, we started something where we do recruiting lunch. So any sport can come in. So they come into the conference room every Monday during high school lunch, and they sit in here and they eat their lunch, and we talk about the recruiting process. I can talk about that with more confidence because of what the first class did, then your class did. It's 100% sold out to grades and AGAT. You know, AGAT, I've taken everywhere I've went because AGAT's the only thing you can't refute. If you give me all you got all the time, which you are the AGAT, like if you could tattoo your forehead legally without losing every job opportunity on the planet, AGAT is what it should be because you give all you got all the time, no matter what. And you can look in that camera and you can tell those kids, I did this. I gave everything I had in the classroom. I mean, you were, like you mentioned earlier, you're one of the few 5-dayers there, which people don't really know what that means. That means instead of going Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, you go all 5 days. And a lot of that was because number one, you used to talk about you wanted the school experience, but you also wanted that extra help, the extra tutoring, the extra homework time, all the extra. Everything I keep saying is extra. You always want to do the extra rep. You always wanted to work out the extra day, even though we told you sometimes don't. You always wanted to go the extra mile. And because of that, look where you're at now. God blessed you with drive, but that drive, someone had to put a key in the ignition. And that's the coolest thing that I want to leave people with is our coaching staff put the key into a lot of people's ignition that God already created. And once that key turned on for you, even though we weren't there for you your senior year, we were there for you your senior year. Even though we weren't there for you your first year in college, we were there for you your first year in college because we put that key in there. The car was already built. The engine was already made. Somebody had to start it. And that's what this culture is about, is how do we start these amazing creations of God into knowing who they are. And when you close all this out, like when you get accepted into law school and when you go do these big and bad things, what people are going to have to remember is it all started with, I gave everything I had all the time. And that's what, if I look at the camera now, what I want coaches to get is you should develop, and this is in the book, you should develop the top to the bottom of your roster. Brock was not at the bottom of our roster when we took over, and Brock was not at the top of our roster, but Brock was on the roster. Therefore, he had to be developed as a player. He had to be developed as a teenager. He had to be developed as a soon-to-be man. And we had to prepare him, and we did. This is what college is going to be like. We wanted to get him to college. It wasn't about, and we said it back then, it's a little different now, the terminology, but we weren't Friday night focused. We were Saturday driven. Now we play games all over the place. So we're not game day driven. We're next day driven. Brock Holton is an example of someone who is next day driven. Our focus on developing him and the family he came from and the spiritual background he has, all those come together and put in front of you a high level football player who's recognized at his college on a wall. I don't really know the gist of it. He could tell us in a second, but it's really cool. And it all goes back to really one phrase, which is AGAT. And I think that's what you could sum up. I do want you to kind of shout yourself out. What did you do? Your dad was texting me about it. What did you do on this wall that you're painted on?
Yeah, so we have this program. I don't know why I called it a program. We have this award you can get called Super Tiger, and it's essentially being in the top 10% cumulative. This is like a rough explanation of it, of like all your combine events. So your bench, your squat, your clean, your 40, 5, 10, 5, and your vertical. And if you like achieve that standard, you get put on the wall. And guys do it. I mean, you have like 10 or so every year. But what was really interesting, like, or unique about what I did it last year was I did it in my second year as a sophomore. And so, like, my name's been on the wall forever. A lot of guys get it done, and then they like get it done going into their senior year. They play and they graduate, and they're not like actually there for it during the off season. But it's there now, which is cool for me. But it was a lot of work. And I mean, even going back to this kind of thing we're talking about, belief. Like I remember hitting 225 on bench for 5, which is like a huge goal that I did like an R weight room at morning weights, and everyone went crazy. And like the coaches, like really like you could feel like the belief and like the sense of pride from the coaches. And it really like meant a lot to me. And I hit it for like 23 last week, like 225 or 23 last Wednesday or something. And it was like cool. Like no one really cares. And like even at a good college program, like you get kind of like this void of like belief in a lot of players unless you're at the tippy top of the roster. And that's just kind of the nature of college football now. But I think that that belief is really what separates. But yeah, for Super Tiger, I guess I benched 345, squatted 550, cleaned 305, ran a 475, jumped 27, nothing great there. And then I had my 510.5 wasn't great, but the other stuff got me that. We'll try to do better this year. But yeah, morning weights, baby.
Well, that's amazing. So, kind of my end question to this is, what does being built different mean to you? And then we're going to come back to our halftime speech of Built Different that Isaac missed. So I want you just to get that in your brain. But this is a question I have for you. What does Built Different actually mean to you? If someone comes up to you and goes, "What is Built Different? I heard you're in this podcast. You're on what's this book? What does being built different actually mean?"
It's a good question. I think it has a lot of different connotations, especially in the spiritual sense. And I think just really Christianity in general is someone being built different, right? Like the whole premise of Christianity is, yes, on a supernatural level, like the God of the universe that created you wants a human relationship with you. And he did so by making himself in human form and dying for our sins. And he sends like his spirit to live inside of us and to dictate our decisions and to give us the fruit of the spirit, which are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, beyond what would be expected out of someone normal in this world. So it's really this like transformative process from a spiritual sense. But I think like on a personal human level, it means like, hey, like I am going to literally die to myself, right? And like I'm going to take my desires and I'm going to deem them not as important. I'm going to honor others above myself. I'm going to love God and love people to the utmost of my ability. And so I think like being a Christian is inherently being built different because it's just a complete opposite of what the world teaches you and what your sinful nature teaches you. I think within the context of football, the AGAT is huge. And Max would always say the same thing. He'd say, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's just this like idea that for me, it was like, I kind of mentioned at Burke Hill, it's like, I'm not going to be complacent with where I'm at. And if the results don't come how they want to, like, that's fine, but I still have faith in God that I'm going to plant the seed and let the crop grow, and I'll harvest whatever God deems me fit to harvest. But, you know, being built different is just not allowing the circumstances of your world to dictate how you respond to what life throws at you, right? Yeah.
That's good. All right, so we have to do this. This is my shout out to Isaac. Isaac, I don't think has missed anything ever since. I like to give him a hard time about it. Um, so we're gonna play McKinney Christian at their field, which they're playing at yeah, it's McKinney ISD's older stadium, which was amazing. And we're in this little locker room, but leading up to that, I had to leave. And I had to go see my son Dylan graduate from advanced infantry training in Georgia. So my wife, 2.0, who's on the team, we drive straight through Georgia. But what you didn't know at the time is I had already went on the bye week and gotten the Built Different tattoo. And I'd gotten it because what happened in that summer is I could not, and I talk about this in the book, I could not break y'all. I wanted to physically break you. I wanted to take you down to the furthest level you could do and rebuild you, and I couldn't do it. And I remember standing in the gym, my back to the pad, and I'm like, I just can't break you. And then one of the guys says, Coach, that's because we're built different. So it stuck. So almost within probably an hour or two of that, I'm like, I got to get that tattooed. And I'd never had anything down here tattooed before. And I'm like, no, it's got to go here. Got this whole plan. Go get the tattoo on the bye week. Keep it covered up that whole week of practice. Leave, drive all the way to Georgia, come back. Y'all do 2 practices without me. We drive straight through to Georgia, spend the night, watch them graduate, drive straight back. Essentially get there for Thursday, games Friday. I'm doing the speech the whole time, the pregame speech in my head while I'm driving. Get there. I'm new at this too. I don't remind Isaac, hey, I'm about to give a speech of the millennia, right? I don't know that because I don't know. And when I start to talk about why we all were the same, why were we all the same? And I don't want you to remember the whole speech. It was a long time ago. I don't remember the whole speech and I gave it. But I want you to tell us, because I don't know, how did you feel when I ripped back and you saw that I tattooed Built Different on my forearm? Because the place uproared. We thought it was a concrete building. We thought it was going to fall apart.
That was pretty awesome. I remember like punching the concrete wall, like pretty crazy. But no, that was an incredible moment. And yeah, we had no clue going into it. I don't think a single person did. And then we went out and played an incredible game. That was my best game in high school, McKinney Christian. That was like the most fun game. One like yeah.
When you think about that moment, I believe that's the moment where God put the seed in me to do what we're doing now. I believe that. And just to close, it took people like you that were diligent, that used the open door policy. I don't know if I ever kicked you out. You used the open door policy. You gave me a coffee mug I still use. You probably don't even remember. It said "Man of Strength," and I still use it. And the Bible verse that was on the back is gone now, but the coffee mug is there. I use it in my encounter time with the Lord almost every single day. I get up very early in the morning. There's no sun. I read. I talk to the Lord, and I always, when I take that coffee mug, and I get a lot of coffee mugs, but that one for some reason just stuck to me, is I take that and I actually do. I'm like, man, Brock Holton believed in everything we said, and we hadn't even ever done it yet. So I want you to know that's how much you mean to us as a coaching staff. A lot of the same guys that coached you are here. You've got Sam Northey here. You've got Cody White here. You've got Josh Raybuck here. You've got now John Raybuck here. You've got Braden Raybuck here. You got all these kids. Josh Marshall came here, won a state championship in track in the 4x2, the hurdles. There's a lot of carryover. And I want you to know that it started with someone like you. It started because I can see now every single year, I can see that could be the next Brock Holton. Now, I don't tell them that because they don't know who you are. And I don't want them to be the next Brock Holton. I want them to be the next version of themselves. But I can relate to the staff and be like, Northey, that's a Brock. Oh, that make sense? So I want to thank you. I know you had to come out of your way. You had a big day today. I want to pray over you and then we'll just get out of here. All right, dear Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to serve you. I thank you for closed doors, slammed doors, jobs being taken away and jobs being opened up for me and my family. And I thank you for Brock and his family. His family means a lot to me, just the belief they had and still have in me. But more importantly, Lord, that Brock, as he is moving forward with the plan that you set in place for him, Lord, I just pray a special covering and a special anointing over his processes. Lord, if your will is to get him into the Texas A&M School of Law, so be it. Let it be done, because I know he will work and he will glorify you in that process. Lord, I pray a special covering over his body, his soul, and his mind. Lord, I pray that you would just continue to feed him with your Holy Spirit's love and your Holy Spirit's wisdom, and give him the discernment to take each step ordered correctly, but also know that he is a human. And if he takes a step to the left or a step to the right, that you're there as his shepherd to meet him. Just like Psalm 23, he will follow you, Lord. Anywhere you tell him to go, he will go. And Lord, I just pray you bless him going in and coming out. In Jesus' name, amen.